see. 10 count starts now.
Welcome. Hi, I'm Linnéa, and I am the Adult Services Librarian at the Carver County Library in Chanhassen. I serve on the Intergenerational Services team for the library, and so this evening is our second program in a series of three intergenerational programs this summer that are meant to connect teens and young adults with older adults in the community. We all have things to learn from each other. At the end of the hour, please take a moment to provide any feedback on this program and any ideas for future generations program. If you have some, you can put them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Our next and the third program in the Summer Generations series is in 2 weeks on Wednesday, August 3rd from 3:30 to 5, and it will actually be in person. It's called Tell Me Something. We welcome middle school and high school students to come with a friend or a family member to chat with adults age 55 plus, live and in person, just outside the library, or in the case of bad weather, at the Senior Center across the plaza. Each pair of people will be paired with a pair of seniors and given conversation starter cards like this. And a librarian, and then they'll start talking, and every 10 minutes, a librarian, probably me, will announce to move on to the next pair of people and have another conversation. And it's a great way to build some community and connect with some people that maybe are not the same as you. So no pre-registrations required, but if you do call the Chanhassen Library to sign up, we will email you a reminder a day or two ahead. For today and August 3rd's programs, participants will receive a certificate for community engagement hours. Hot tip, these would be great programs to include on job and college applications. So keep looking for Generations programs on our website and in our libraries, and we hope to see you. This evening, we're going to cover 5 topics for teens and young adults to help you as you become independent in the adult world. Please post any questions in the chat, and we will have our experts respond after each of them have had a chance to share some life hacks and resources for you. Our first panelist tonight is Amaryllis Carrion, a supervising attorney with Homeline. Stable shelter is one of the first things young adults need when leaving home, and she's going to give you information to know your rights and your responsibilities as a renter and what to do if something goes wrong. When I was 23 years old, a young adult, I needed the services of Homeline myself, and I am the better for it. I was very grateful for services that helped me. When Emma began adulting herself, she remembers the challenge of managing money and the importance of a budget. Please start us off, Emma.
Hi, all. So let's just start with the basics. What is Homeline? We're a nonprofit law firm that offers free legal advice to all tenants in Minnesota. And this is very helpful for you all because if you have issues with your landlord, we should be your first line of defense. We're staffed by attorneys and volunteer law students and tenant advocates. And it's a phone line, it's free of charge. You can go to our website, homelinemn.org, and email an attorney directly, or you can just call our line at 612-728-5767, and we will give you legal advice over the phone. We do have services in Hmong, Somali, Spanish, and English. So the big question here is there a law in Minnesota that helps tenants? And yes, it's Minnesota Statute 504B, period. Well, it starts with 101. But that's basically what you should look at if you are looking for information on the laws and regulations of housing in the state of Minnesota. The Attorney General is also a great resource. If you Google Attorney General Minnesota, in their website, you can do a search for the Landlord Tenants Manual of Rights and Responsibilities. That is something you should definitely have. It's a good summary of the law. Another excellent resource, if you have questions, say that you have an eviction that you want to get removed from your record, or you have questions about repairs and you're a little bit too scared to speak to an attorney, You can go to lawhelpmn.org and enter rentals, landlord tenant, or housing, and it has documents that are very helpful with very specific areas that you might have with issues with your rental. I think when you're young, it's very easy to say, well, I'm just gonna get a roommate. And I always ask people to be careful with that. One, usually when you room with a friend, it doesn't end up well. But more importantly is the issue of the lease. There are two options for a lease with a roommate. It could be that both of you, or however many parties are going to be rooming together, are in one lease. And then there's the individual leases that are more common when you're at a university with private landlords, where you rent a room in an apartment. And so each individual roommate has a lease. I prefer the individual leases because that means that if you need to move out, you can look into breaking your lease individually. When you are in a lease with a bunch of your friends or someone you met on Craigslist or Facebook or TikTok or wherever people meet nowadays, the problem with that is if someone stops paying their rent, everyone else is still going to be responsible for the rent that is owed. The landlords don't care who pays the rent. They just care that the rent is paid. And legally, if your roommate stops paying, you're going to be responsible for the full amount. All you can do is then sue them in conciliation court, which is small claims court, think Judge Judy. And while you might get a judgment there, collecting that money is extremely difficult. So that's something to keep in mind. Sometimes it's better to just rent a small space or a studio than to be in a big house with friends and sort of live that dream of partying and having fun. In terms of repairs, in Minnesota, landlords are responsible for repairs unless they can show that you caused the damage knowledgeably, willfully, or maliciously. This is very important. Say, for example, during the winter, you don't have heat. Some counties and some cities have regulations as to how much heat needs to be in a house. And so that's a very easy fix for you. You buy a little thermometer, measure the temperature in the room, standing in the middle of the room. If it doesn't meet the requirement, which is usually around 68 or 65 degrees, it depends on the city, then you can file what is called an emergency tenant remedy action. Now, this is, remember, during the winter only. What that means is that the court will see this claim immediately, hopefully same day, and they will force the landlord to provide the utility that is missing, in this case, heat. Same goes for water. If you have appliances and like your stove isn't working, that is ETRA worthy. If your door isn't locking because that's a security reason, that's ETRA worthy. Unfortunately, refrigerators are not, unless you're a diabetic or someone who has to keep medication refrigerated. And again, this is something that you can call us at Homeland and we'll be able to give you advice as to what to do from there. The other option is if you have regular repairs, like, I don't know, there's a hole in the wall that needs to be fixed. So that would be a regular repair. You have to give it to the landlord in writing, like, dear landlord, there's this repair that needs to be made, and they would have 14 days to do the repair. Again, they can't charge you unless they can show that you caused the damage. Another important thing to know in Minnesota is if you rent a house, landlords are responsible for doing the snow removal and the yard work. That's not your responsibility. They can most definitely give you a rental discount or pay you to do that work, but it's not your responsibility. And you will see in a lot of leases that it says that you have to do it. Well, you don't, unless it's in writing and they provide you compensation for it. Let's see, what other questions we tend to have. Evictions. Evictions are sort of all the rage now after COVID because people weren't able to pay rent. And so those are tricky. You need to make sure that you always pay your rent. because the landlords can file for eviction as soon as there's a debt owed. So usually they give you a 2 to 5 day period after the first of the month to pay your rent. If you don't, they're going to go ahead and file in court. And so for that, you definitely need to call us, because there is a process, like a bunch of steps you should follow to get that removed from your record after you pay rent. And there are services in the counties and organizations that will help you catch up with rent if you have a debt and haven't been able to pay it off. Issues with neighbors, say there's loud music, weird smells. Those are things you can definitely report to the landlord. Minnesota, I would say, is fairly tenant friendly. Unfortunately, our law was last revised in the 70s, so there are a lot of things that could be improved. But know that there are quite a few protections that you have that you wouldn't have elsewhere. And going back to repairs, there are issues like pest treatment, bed bugs, ants, roaches, mice. All those things are the landlord's responsibility, again, unless they can prove that you brought the plague into the unit. Let's see if there are any questions. No questions yet. Katie, do you have any questions that you would like me to answer? No questions yet? All right, so going back to, again, the services that we offer, it's free legal advice over the phone. You will most likely be able to talk to an attorney. I can give you my email address, is amarilisc@homelinemn.org if anyone wants to contact me with questions. When you are reviewing leases, there are important things to look at, like if there's a lease break fee, that it means that if you want to break your lease, you will have to pay a lease to the landlord to break it. So I tend to prefer leases that have the lease break fee. Even if it's a lot of money, it's usually 2 months rent, but it's important to have that because otherwise you would be locked into the lease. And there are questions of whether a month-to-month lease or a 1-year lease is better. It really has to do more with what your income looks like and where you are going to be in your life at a certain point. If you're just trying to figure out if living by yourself is something you want to do, then a month-to-month lease or a short-term lease is better. You do end up paying a little bit more, but it's a good way to sort of get your feet wet and see if being away from home is something that you want to do and can continue to do. Right, I think we're at about 1 minute left. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me or let the staff at the library know, and they'll direct you in how to contact us. Nope, we seem to have a little bit of a technical difficulty going on right now.
Okay, we're going to keep moving along and we're going on to our next speaker. I believe it's Samantha. I don't have any information on how to introduce you, Samantha, so I'm going to let you do that.
Not a problem. Hi, everybody. My name is Samantha Roth. I work with Carver County Extension in financial capability and family development. And one of the things I remember when I was younger is just making my money work for me instead of working for my money. And so like having a plan for what I was doing with my dollars instead of just kind of free range spending. Today, I'm going to talk to you about, how do you make healthy food choices on a budget? And the biggest thing to think about as food costs continue to rise and, we want to eat healthy, make sure we're getting all our different food groups, is really meal planning, which may not sound exciting, but it is very important. Most people don't plan on what they're going to eat until right before mealtime and have a tendency then to make unhealthy choices or to eat out because it's just easier or it's on the way. And so it can also result in some mindless eating and be a lot more expensive. So thinking about planning ahead really does help, especially if you can plan a few days ahead. But if this is new to you, just plan like, what are you doing tomorrow, Wednesday, for this? Think about like, what is going to be my fruits, my vegetables, my proteins, my grains, and my dairy. Those are the 5 food groups that we want to see on our plates to make sure that we're eating a well-balanced and nutritious meal. Oftentimes when we are thinking about what we're going to eat, we actually forget some of our favorite foods. I find this very common for me. And so we get in a rut of eating the same things again. And so the temptation to eat out or to do something different is even more tempting. So it's helpful to think about like, what are some of your favorite foods? So if you are joining us or later after this, grab a piece of paper and write down your favorite foods. Start with some main entrees. So things like spaghetti, tacos, meatloaf, that kind of stuff, and write down those foods. And then if there's specific, vegetables that you really like and how to prepare those, add those on to that list as well. What are your favorite fruits that you could add in? Which meals does it make sense to add those in? So think of the different things that are made from, beef and chicken, pork, eggs, tofu, beans. Maybe it's easier to think about your favorite Mexican or Italian dishes, or even sometimes breakfast for lunch is a great way to go to as well, to add a little variety to it. So as you think through those, as you make that list and put down some of your favorite foods, hopefully you're getting more than 4 or 5 as you take some time. And then using that list that you've made, create your meal plan. Like I said, just go ahead and start for tomorrow with what you have. And if you don't have things, then we have to talk about grocery shopping. So a big thing when we are meal planning and going grocery shopping is to make sure you don't go to the grocery store hungry. If you've ever gone grocery shopping and went when you were hungry, you can probably remember your cart, or when you got home and empty your bags thinking, wow, I bought a lot of chips, or I bought a lot of other items that I didn't really need or wouldn't have gotten normally. So it's important to be fed before you go grocery shopping so that you don't have that temptation as much as well. When you're going to go grocery shopping, check at home to see what you have and make a list of what you need to get. You can do that with a pen or paper. You can do that with apps. You can tell Alexa, if you have one, to add it to the grocery list as you run out of things. Once you actually get to the store, when you're grocery shopping, make sure to stick to your list, because impulse buys can cost you a lot of money. And so sticking to our list is able to keep us there. It's also good to shop the outer edges of the grocery store. That's where you'll find the fruits and vegetables and meats and your breads, grains, that kind of stuff as well. When you are shopping, it's important to look at your unit pricing. And so that is on the labels on the stores, and you'll see like price per ounce if something is 5 ounces versus something that's 12 ounces. And look at that to help you get an idea of which one is actually the best deal. But also recognize if you're an individual who is just feeding yourself versus feeding a family of 6, you may not need like a 15-ounce can of beans. But as an individual, you might have planned to have beans multiple times. So then that makes sense. So think about those things as well. It's also helpful to think about like, will I actually eat this? If I do buy the bigger container, will I remember to freeze it or to use it in the next couple of days? Because we don't want to throw out our food, which then also has a cost too. Store brands will typically save you money and are very similar to the name brands. And often when the food is convenient, it's a higher cost. So when we think about baby carrots, they often cost more than regular carrots that you can just cut yourself. However, if you will actually eat the carrots, if they're in the form of baby carrots, you may be okay with that expense of a few cents to make sure that you get that vegetable in. So now we've kind of talked about ways to keep costs. How do you make sure like you have a quick meal so that you don't tempt yourself with going out to eat? And one of the things that we love is flour tortillas here in Extension. We have a tendency to like just throw together some cheddar cheese and grill them for a quick quesadilla. If we have leftover chicken or other meat, we'll throw that in there as well. Also corn and black beans help that. You can do refried beans with some cheddar cheese and diced onion, put it in the microwave until warm, and now you have a bean burrito. Or you can mix together a cup of salsa, a cup of black beans, a cup of corn, and some chili powder, put them in tortillas, put them in a baking dish, bake for 20 minutes, and you've just made a quick enchilada. So that's a good item to always have on hand. Chili beans, you can make a quick chili. You can add it to lettuce for a quick taco salad. Oftentimes labels on different beans and other food will have quick recipe ideas to look for as well. If one of your favorites was mac and cheese, which I mean, I'm in my 40s and I still like mac and cheese. Instead of just eating only the boxed mac and cheese, also add a vegetable as well, and a little bit of fruit or a little bit of protein to make it a complete meal. Eggs are kind of that staple food that are fairly cheap, and you can make a lot of different things into them and add a whole bunch of different ingredients. Those are usually my clean out the refrigerator meals, is that I just whip up some eggs with whatever vegetables are starting to look not so great, and put them in there with a piece of toast and a side of fruit, and then you have a great meal for that day. And don't forget your fruits and vegetables. It's easier in the summertime. I'm sure you've noticed to eat your fruits and vegetables because we're all kind of craving them. But in the middle of a Minnesota winter, it can get a little challenging. So don't forget to add those in. And don't worry, buy what you can afford. So canned, frozen, fresh, or dried are all good options for all of them. And we do encourage you to aim to have a fruit or vegetable at each meal. If you're looking for some websites to help you out and figure out how exactly to make these quick meal ideas and to save you money, Minnesota Extension has the Real Life Good Food website that's super helpful. If you're looking for the best meatloaf recipe, according to my coworker, Mary, Iowa State has a Spend Smart website that has that on. And then of course, myplate.gov has a whole bunch of recipes that talks about meal planning and how to make a whole and healthy plate.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. I'm sorry I wasn't there for your introduction. One of the things you learn in adulting is that, well, you probably experienced this in school, things don't always go perfectly, and you have to learn to pivot. Thanks a lot for the information. We've talked about shelter, we've talked about food, and probably one of the most important things, we're going to talk about mental health as you begin your adult journey. Katie Mac-Corrado is a school-linked therapist with Carver County who has worked with all ages in all educational settings. In her own youth, she said it was hard to hold healthy boundaries. She says, when you are just launching into adulthood, you have a newfound freedom, a new wealth of choices and options. Having boundaries is how you find what you need and how to be yourself in the world. Go ahead, Katie.
Hi, thank you so much. And you pronounced my name beautifully. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So like she said, I'm Katie Mac-Corrado, and I'm here to just kind of talk about some basic mental health kinds of things and what we're going to call the launching phase kind of mental health, right? So the most important piece when we're looking at mental health is to realize that there are two kind of categories, right? We can really focus on our own mental health and things that we can do within our own control, within our own bodies and minds and worlds and experiences. And we have like sort of this bubble of control around us, right? So we have some space here, and that's where my tips are going to be. But there's also a bigger bubble of resources and supports around us. And so part of launching at this stage is to start to recognize and to notice the things that we have within our bubble and that we can use, but also to be able to access some of those resources and things that are in the bigger bubble. So today we're going to talk about basically our ABCs of launching mental health. So the first one I want to talk about is attempting. Attempt new things. Even as I listen to Samantha talking about the food and the different ways of planning, right? When we're at this point of life, when you're at this launching stage, we already have so many perspectives in our mind, so many ideas and views of what the world is and who we are in that world and what we like and don't like and things like that. But attempting new things at this stage is such an important thing. It helps us to expand our mental health. It helps us to expand our ideas of who we are and who we want to be. So attempting new things really becomes the brave point of this launching stage. Whether you're at home and you're doing school like in an online thing, or if you're taking a gap year and you're going to adventure somewhere, or you're trying some of those things that they mentioned earlier with like looking for roommates and trying to talk about dorm life, those kinds of things, right? So whether you're anywhere on these levels, we want to be open to actually attempting some new things. Try the tofu. You might not have liked it when you were 6, but you might like it now. And so just kind of think about that. What are some things that are coming across my path that I could attempt, even if I don't necessarily think or know that I like it at this point? So B, boundaries, like Linnéa had said, boundaries really help you. And as you've grown so far in your world, the boundaries have been kind of built for you or not built for you, right? You're kind of a product of whatever environment you have been in your whole life. And now you're at this point where the world opens up and you have more opportunity. You have more places to go. You have more people that you will interact with and less people putting those boundaries around you. So it becomes something that we do internally that help us to feel confident in who we are, confident with our relationships, healthy about who we choose to let into our life or choices we decide to make. I think sometimes when we talk about boundaries, there's this idea that they're already established or that there are rules. And there are some rules and there are things that are established, but you get to decide what those boundaries are. So if you have a friend who is consistently bringing a negative energy into your world, you have the power to choose if that's something that you want in your life, or if it's something that you need a boundary around in order to feel healthier and happier. Sometimes we learn what boundaries we want after somebody has crossed a boundary we didn't know we had. And so as a launching adult, we can use those experiences to determine what our boundaries are going to be. It doesn't mean that you walk out into the world with all of these boundaries already established. It means you now have the opportunity to determine what boundaries are going to make you feel healthier and happier. So we have attempting new things, A. B, boundaries, because they really do help you. C, connect. We need to connect with other people. We need to connect with ourselves. We need to hold on to and kind of rekindle and keep the connections we have, like maybe with family. Maybe we have a really close friend that when we're going off to college and we need to maintain some of that connection. When you're launching in the world, it is really common to feel a sense of loneliness or a sense of separation, a sense of grief or loss at times, because maybe you've moved really far from your family. Maybe your friends have moved really far from where you are. There's sort of this point of life where people move into that greater ecosystem, our greater, bigger world that we have. And so we need to intentionally try to connect with people who feel important. So if your parents or a friend is important, be mindful of keeping and maintaining that connection, but also connect with yourself. This is a time where you might actually really have individual independent space that you might not have had at any other point in your life. It's okay to be quiet. It's okay to stay home. It's okay to go out if you've always stayed home, right? So finding a way to feel connected to yourself and to those around you, especially if you've been kind of disconnected from either where you're coming from or you've moved far away or there's some plans around that, then you want to find new ways to connect. And that's how you're attempting new things, right? You might not like volleyball at the beach. You've never enjoyed it, but somebody invited you to go, so you're just going to go. What we know is you might not end up being a master volleyball player, but you might meet somebody at that game that does share an interest with you. And now you've built a new friendship. You don't have to play volleyball every weekend to have had that one experience that opens your door a little bit to some new connections. So we're going to attempt new things. We're going to have some healthy boundaries and learn about what we're comfortable with, connect to ourselves and connect to others. We're going to discover. You have to discover what actually feels meaningful to you. What do you want to put your time and energy into? When you're feeling like your time, your energy are meaningful, you are naturally going to have healthier mental health. These are things that are all within your control, right? I'm going to try something. I actually feel like that might lead to something that I like to be around kids. Maybe I'll try. And so discovering who are you and what opportunities do you have in front of you? We actually need those things in order to feel healthier and happier. We need connection, we need meaning, and we need these new experiences to kind of build our mind and our idea of how people work in the world, because you're figuring things out right now too. And D, engage. So engagement becomes one of the most important things. If your level here, you're going to push up to here. So if you're always engaged in doing lots of different things, maybe try to focus on yourself a little, right? Pull in, learn about what you need and what's healthy for you. If you're really introverted, push out a little bit and try something new. Try to talk to somebody and get a new perspective, right? When we engage, we're actually moving our energy. We're moving the feelings and the chemicals that are in our body, and we start to digest all those chemicals, and we actually build motivation. So often we think, I'm not motivated, so I can't do something. And what it really is scientifically is that the action and the activity create more motivation, right? You're more excited to try something new. And engagement can be tricky when you're having challenges with your mental health, right? So people are less likely to want to connect, less likely to feel meaningful. Maybe they're feeling more overwhelmed. So if it's something that's important to do, it's worth doing poorly. So do something, move, try something new. It's better to do something poorly than to not do it at all. It's better to try and to get out there and build new connections and sort of move your mental health energy, because you start to really gain a sense of control over your life, your boundaries, your relationships, things like that, which all impact our mental health. So if you're getting to the point where you're feeling like, I'm at this funk and I'm talking to my friends and I don't really feel better afterwards. Generally at this age, if we're talking to friends, it helps us feel better, right? It helps us do that. Exactly. It helps us move the energy, digest the frustrated feeling, digest that sense of anxiety. And if it's not helping, that's a sign that you might want to be looking for some outside supports, right? Or if you're feeling like you're stuck for quite a while and this mental funk or worry isn't going away, then you might want to search for some resources outside of yourself, right? So things like traditional outpatient therapy, that can be very tricky when you're looking at all the paperwork, but you have the opportunities and the options to kind of look at where am I in the community and what ones are available. So we've got like an outpatient sort of typical model. We've got like a crisis response. So if you're in Carver County, I provided our Carver County crisis link, right? So you have sort of a crisis response level, or we have this ongoing therapy level. There's also something called BetterHelp, which is like a text online outpatient therapy. So that's something I found a lot of young people are actually really connected to, and I would recommend. And that's really where you're on like a phone and you can do it. There's different levels where you can talk or FaceTime or text message, but you have like a virtual space with that therapist. So, I guess just sort of summarizing, I just want to really encourage you all to try new things, get out there, be compassionate to yourself, connect with others. And if you need that additional support, don't have any hesitation to reach out.
Thank you. I wish I had all of that advice when I was younger. That's all good things to hear, seriously. And sometimes you have to find those things out on your own. So we've dealt with some health issues. if you're going to move into adulthood, you also need to think about how you're going to pay for things. We have Michael Branscombe. He's a youth employment counselor with Career Force in Chaska. He recalls that when he began adulting, his challenge was budgeting and bills and time management. Michael's going to share information about jobs and careers, how to pay your way into adulting.
Hi, everybody. I appreciate you having me here tonight. As mentioned, I work for Career Force Chaska, and that's located at 602 East 4th Street in downtown Chaska at the Government Center. My phone number, and you can call or text me, is 612-503-2599. And so what we do at Career Force Chaska is work with all things employment related. And as the youth employment counselor, I work with ages 14 to 24 years old. And so when we look at employment, we think about building up your resume, looking at different career assessments to find out what interests you may have. We look at learning how to do interviews and possible interview questions that you might encounter. But then we also look at what are the jobs that are available? What does the market look like right now? And where can you most expect to find jobs? We also just get a ton of resources for places that are hiring on a daily basis. Right now, everybody is hiring. We can definitely help point people in the right direction. As a part of employment, one of our flagship programs is our summer youth program. And as a part of that program, youth, like I said, ages 14 to 24, we help with job placements in the community. So we partner with various employers, typically in Carver County, but it could be anywhere. And we partner with them and we place youth at the different job sites. So for instance, right now we have youth over at SJB Masonry in Watertown. We have youth over at Chaska Community Center. We have some at the Chaska and Chanhassen Libraries, the Historical Society in Laconia, Country Inn and Suites in Chanhassen, Trending Upward Thrift Store in Laconia. We have Victoria Rose Floral. And then we also work with Youth Build, which is a really cool program that helps youth restore credits that they are missing while also earning a wage doing it, doing construction programs throughout the summer. And so that program is 25 hours a week, and they can get a wage. We at minimum pay $13 an hour for in-school youth and $15 an hour for out-of-school youth. However, we are able to match what most employers are paying. So I have some youth making close to like $17, $18 an hour over the summer. And so the nice thing about that program is that it gives youth the ability to make mistakes on the job, to learn, to grow, give themselves the freedom to not know things and be okay with that. And we're there to support them along the way as they are placed at a job site. And we do assessments and evaluations during that process. We really try to work closely with them so it's a successful experience for them. We encourage questions. We do financial literacy with them. And we like I said, any and all things employment related, we try to boost their skills. So we try to also do a soft skills training as well. And it really helps them learn what it means to be in the workplace, because that's a place that most of us are in for a very long time. Alongside the employment piece, we also have education. So obviously, we work with in-school youth. So as a part of our education program, we do offer incentives for youth for grades and attendance. So if there's youth that are dealing with truancy issues, we can write it into their employment plan that if they can stay in school, not miss days, that they can get gift cards throughout the year. And so each of those employment plans is tailored to each individual youth and what makes sense for their goals and their plan. So we have like Target gift cards, Fleet Farm, gas cards, which are really popular right now. And then as a part of all that, we offer webinars about career readiness and career exploration. Each of those webinars, you can get $25 per webinar, up to $150 if all 6 are completed. So right now I've got a handful of youth going through that alongside their summer youth program to earn extra money during the year. And my background is also in community mental health. I moved here from Colorado Springs, Colorado, and where I did therapy and case management and all sorts of fun stuff with individuals and families experiencing homelessness. So I offer a webinar about mental health in the workplace, understanding what your triggers are, understanding coping skills, and figuring out positive ways to deal with stress while you're in the workplace, because we all know the workplace can be very, very stressful. So having a good foundation for that can help lead youth to building a stronger foundation for future success. And then kind of encompassing all of that is support money that we have available for most things employment and school related. So if it's tools or clothing or non-slip shoes, or maybe a person needs driver's ed training where we can pay the $400, $500 to help a youth get through driver's ed, because it's a lot of money, but it's really important for self-sufficiency and independence, to be able to get to your job. So we have monies available to help pay for these things. And as long as it makes sense, we can write it into their employment plan. And then for our out-of-school youth, if schooling is something that they are interested in, there are possibilities for helping pay for certificate programs. For instance, we've had youth go through phlebotomy training to get into healthcare, which is drawing blood. We've had youth go and get their certificate in automotive technician training, any number of things. So, I mean, there's so many possibilities, and it makes more sense to have us use funds that are available instead of having to go into debt. We can help pay for books and, all those fun things. We've even done laptops for kids when it made sense. So there are a lot of options that we offer, and it's really just a matter of, calling, texting me, FaceTiming me. I'm trying to be as flexible as possible. And like I said, my number is 612-503-2599. And you can always reach out to me anytime, and I will get back to you, very, very quickly. So I appreciate your time tonight. That is kind of the long and short of what we have to offer over at Carver County.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. I didn't realize there were all those things. So that's good for me as a librarian to know to refer people to you as well. Okay, so we've had food and shelter and mental health, and now we've gotten some work. We get money, right? And so we need to talk a little bit about money. In addition to having the privilege to be married to Lisa, the Chanhassen Library librarian for teen services, and my partner in presenting this series of programs this summer, Mike Gearman is the VP Mortgage Loan Officer with the very close to the library, Americana Community Bank. Mike is also the proud father of Kira, who we hope is tuning in tonight. She's a real live young adult. And when he was a teen, he remembers that it was a challenge to save money because of all the temptations to purchase items that he wanted instead of saving for what he needed. Mike, I think it's been a lifelong struggle for most of us to separate the wants from the needs. So please share some information about planning a budget and establishing credit so our audience can get on good financial footing starting out.
Great introduction. Boy, a lot of big billing to live up to there. I will echo what you just mentioned, Linnéa, that we've talked about renting, we've talked about how to meal plan and food costs, mental health, and job resources on how to get a job, how to look for a job and secure a job. So once we've secured a job and we have income, maybe we have enough income and our jobs supports us enough where we can go out and find a place to rent or buying a house, which is kind of my specialty in the mortgage side. So we need to budget for that so we don't fall into those traps like I did when I was young, where we have money and we think we don't have any bills to pay, so why do we need to save money for a rainy day? So leading into planning a budget, when we have income, we're going to have some debts. So along with renting, we're going to have utilities involved. We're going to have food planning, which relates to food costs or groceries. and any other bills that we may have. Maybe we have some transportation already. We need to be able to put gas in a vehicle to be able to get to and from our place that we're renting to where our place of employment is. In my world of mortgage lending, income and debt, and to debt, we commonly refer to that as DTI, or debt to income, which is important when buying a house because there are certain parameters that you have to adhere to in order to qualify to buy a house. So saving for a down payment would be a priority when we're planning on a budget, or maybe even putting some money in an IRA or a Roth, starting a Roth IRA for retirement down the way, or maybe throughout our life crisis, we may need to borrow against that IRA, which there are programs for that as well. Areas of using or making a budget would be starting an Excel spreadsheet, and you can get help from your parents on that, or just work on it yourself. That's the low budget way of doing it. There are some apps online that you can use. I know young adults like to use apps because when I'm working with young adults that are qualifying to buy a house, the communication is typically through texting or FaceTiming or Zoom meetings, as we're going through a meeting online here. So some of the apps that I've looked at that can be looked up on either iPhone or the other phone service are, look them up. You can do a search for them there. You Need a Budget is one of them. Good budget plan, Money Manager, or Every Dollar. Again, those are they're free. Should be able to download them, and they're already set up rather than setting up an Excel spreadsheet on your own. But if you'd like to do that, you can do that as well. Once we've filled out and completed a budget, maybe we need to establish credit. Maybe we're looking to come to see me to buy a home. So we're going to need to have some type of a credit score to be able to qualify to buy a home. So some of the ways to establish credit, one of the easiest ways would probably be to have a family member add you to a credit card as an authorized user. You wouldn't really even have to do anything other than have your name on the credit card, and hopefully your parents are good at using the card and paying the card off, using the card and paying the card off, because that would be how you would establish credit and build credit on top of those payments. Help building credit. So another way would be to apply for a gas card or a Target card or a Kohl's card. Those would probably come with a small limit on them. So what I would recommend there is, if you were to get a gas card or a Target card or something like that, is use them every time you would go to Target, or most of the times you go to Target. And then as soon as you get home after that, make sure you go online and pay that card off, because that helps you show that you're credit worthy and that you're able to make those payments and pay those cards down or pay them off. Also, getting a loan with a cosigner. If you go and you were to purchase a used vehicle or new vehicle or something like that, maybe your parents or a relative would cosign for you. That would also help establish credit. So other avenues of credit, there are ways to do as far as getting qualified through the mortgage side without having a credit score, but they're a heck of a lot harder, and there's a lot more documentation that needs to be done to make that happen. As far as building credit, usually takes, once you've established a credit card or are on as a authorized user, typical timeline for building credit. Usually takes an average of anywhere from 4 to 6 months. So don't look for it right away. As soon as your parents put you on as a authorized user, that you already have a 800 credit score. That's not going to happen overnight. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had. I know that's short and sweet, but any questions out there regarding what I went over as far as
you just mentioned on the credit score, the 800. So for young adults and teens, what is the range on a credit score?
Credit scores can go in the 800s and they can be down as low as in the 400s. So obviously you don't want to be down in the 400s. That's not very good credit. As far as the mortgage lending side, we like to see anything over 700 is going to get you premium interest rates. Anything under 700, you're probably looking at a little higher interest rate. There are programs out there like FHA that will help with lower credit scores, so you can still qualify for a good interest rate.
And I'll ask you, as long as I still have you, Mike, how old do you have to be to start investing? At what is there, like 18 or 21 when you can actually start? You mentioned Roth IRAs, and I think that is a later thing, but for younger people, savings accounts don't really pay. Is there other ways they can invest to kind of build some of that income?
18 is the age limit for a Roth IRA, but as far as building up a savings, there are CDs out there. You can get 24-month CDs, you can get 5-year CDs, you can get 10-year CDs, and some of those will have a good return on investment as well. So those are some other avenues of saving money and making more interest on your money.
I was going to say, for my generation, we think of CDs as compact discs, but I'm not even sure the next generation even deals with those. So now that everything's streaming, right?
Right.
Okay. This is a time, if we have a live audience, we are going to be posting this for later audiences to view as well. If you have any questions, to put them in the chat. And in the meantime, I'll throw a couple out since we have, Mike gave us a couple of bonus minutes there. I am going to go back to Katie and just ask for maybe an easy to remember in the moment exercise to get centered when you're overwhelmed, because definitely adulting, starting out especially, but all through life, adulting can be very overwhelming.
Yes, I think that's a really good question, actually. So there are a lot of things. It really depends what we're looking at. So I'm thinking kind of how you frame the question. You're thinking like that overwhelmed, anxious, kind of racing mind sort of a feeling. So doing anything that can get you grounded. What's happening is your mind is kind of taking over and it's pulling you out of the moment. So you want to do something that can really center and ground you. So sometimes it's taking your shoes off and pushing your feet into the floor. With young kids, you might have remembered in school doing like the stiff noodle, loose noodle, stiff noodle, loose noodle kind of thing, right? So it's the idea of really activating some of your muscles. You can do things like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is one where you're looking for 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear. And you just really start to ground yourself in the space that you're in. If you're in like a panic mode and you're really starting to feel like that sense of fear and panic, there's a vagal nervous system that or nerve that runs through your whole body. And the one thing I found that works really, really well is a cooling ice pack right on your chest. So that's sort of like a scientific way to shift that panic energy, because it calms that vagal nerve. So trying to ground yourself, but then really trying to get that body system under control. Then you can start using more techniques like reaching out, talk to somebody through your problem, that kind of thing. Really using that cool pack can be very helpful.
Wonderful. Actually, we could all use a cool pack. For anyone watching this later, we're up in the upper 90s today. So
good point.
Hot and sticky. I could go for a cool pack right now myself. Sam, I wondered about food shelves. If a young person were getting to the point where they're not having nutritional choices because they just can't afford it, do you have to prove income or anything in order to get food from food shelves?
Right. That's a great question. Most food shelves have moved away from proving income. A lot of them just have a free food drive that are sponsored, and in Carver County, I believe every city has their own food shelf, and there might even be a couple of extra food shelves that are through different churches and other nonprofits as well. So it's just important to go through during that drive. And I always tell people, if you're unable to fill your cupboards for some reason, and that's where you need to save some money, go to the food shelf. And then when you're back on your feet, go volunteer or donate to give back. They're there to help people out. And there's no judgment for those who are working there. And oftentimes, food shelves have food left over. So they want people to come and be able to get nutritious food for them so that they don't have to worry about what they're going to eat next.
Great answer. Thank you. Michael, so a lot of kids I know, it's all about going to college. It's about going to a 4-year university. You're knowing what you want to major in, and getting into a program. But as you were talking about a lot of the job opportunities that are available, even while students are still in school, what are alternative paths that don't involve, for someone who maybe didn't enjoy school, but yeah, some of the certificate kind of programs, is it essential that the whole goal is to go to college, or what else can we do?
Hi, that's a great question. So, so much of it obviously depends on career goals. And one thing we go over with all the youth is, obviously what their interests are. And depending on what their interests are, we talk about, the level of schooling necessary to accomplish what their goals are. So, me being a therapist background, I had to go to a bachelor's degree plus a master's degree. And, there's just a lot of schooling involved there. But there are other options. So there's technical schools. Where if you don't want to go for 4 years, you can go to a 2-year school, get a degree, and get a really great job. There's also paid apprenticeships that we have access to all over the state, where an employer will pay you to learn and on-the-job training, and you get a really, really great wage, and you get to learn your craft and trade at the same time. And more and more employers right now are moving more towards, you don't need to have any experience coming in to our field. We will train you, we will pay to have you trained, and you will also get paid a lot of money to do it. So, now is the time really to be in the job market, because all the employers are competing with one another to get the attention of youth and get the attention of adults who are trying to make a career change, because there's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of employers that need people that are ready and willing to work. And now, the wages are trying to keep pace with how expensive it is to live, so a youth can hopefully find a wage that makes sense, where they can be independent and get a place on their own, and hopefully, move themselves, if it's a goal of theirs, to home ownership and things of that nature.
Wonderful. Thank you. Lisa, if you're with me, do you have anything to ask or contribute here?
Yes, on behalf of all of our teens and young adults that we serve, I want to thank all of our wonderful panelists tonight for this incredible information that they've shared. This is right where our daughter is living right now. She's 19, getting her first apartment, has anxiety, wants to cook. I mean, all the things. So this has been so helpful. Thank you, everyone. And if you would like some resources for further learning, guess what? Your local friendly libraries can help you out. And we're cheap too. Cheap and free. So come and see us. We've got resources like our databases for career training. There's LinkedIn Learning. We've got a number of things to offer there. And our ebooks, audiobooks are available on the Libby app. You can get those on your phone and iPad, desktop, laptop, and those are all free. And if you're in college, sometimes you can access some books that you need for your classes there. And print books. Boy, we've got a wealth of great stuff. We've got super cookbooks, mental health books, and my personal favorite, the Dummies series. I really like this one, Personal Finance in Your 20s. And I feel really smart when I read the Dummies series. So I think that's the effect it's supposed to have. And our programs and free, that's good budgeting too, to get your library card, no matter what county you're in. And we're here to help.
Wonderful. Lisa, for those that have watched the program and
I think you're muted, Linnéa.
Am I? No, I hope not. Uh-oh, not again. I think I'm good. Let me try off and on here. Okay, is that any better?
I'm not hearing you, but I see your beautiful face.
I hear you.
And I think maybe you're getting close to signing off. We've got about 2 minutes left with our group. Oh, and thank you for mentioning that. Linnéa wants everyone to know, any teens that would like to get some community engagement hours that you can use for National Honor Society requirements or other volunteer hours that you need at school. Come and see us. Let us know that we have, I think it looks like Susan says the link is already posted, how to get community engagement hours. And so we'll send you a certificate for that you can use. Okay, anything else I should mention, ladies and gentlemen?
No, other than my initial glitch, I think we had a very successful hour. I really do also thank all of our participants and especially our speakers who took the time on a hot summer July evening to come and share some great tips and life hacks. Thank you so much. And we hope to see you at the library. Bye-bye.